Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're connecting the dots on this month's most absolutely critical policy, economic, and global shifts. We aren't just going to skim through a list of isolated headlines. We're going to dig into the underlying currents actually driving them. From century-old historical protests that are literally shaping today's courtrooms, to the AI revolution changing our workflows, and even the silent, under-the-radar geopolitical strategies redrawing our borders, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's just jump right in.
We've structured this explainer into 4 distinct pillars today: redefining social justice, navigating economic shifts, securing strategic borders, and finally, health and climate frontiers. But before we get into today's headlines, let's ask ourselves kind of a fascinating question. How does history quietly write our modern laws? You know, it's super easy to think of history as just stuff stuck in the past. But as you'll see, the struggles from a century ago are the exact blueprints for the rights we exercise today. Okay, let's dive right into pillar number 1, redefining social justice.
Connecting the dots here, we see a pretty brilliant comparison between 2 monumental events in Indian history. On one side, you have the famous 1930 Dandi March, or the Salt Satyagraha. We all know this one, right? It was a fight against an external ruler, the British, for political and economic freedom. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's 1927 Mahad Satyagraha, that wasn't fighting an empire. It was fighting an internal sickness. It targeted caste-based exclusion just to secure basic human dignity and the right to drinking water. And what's really incredible is that the Mahad struggle directly inspired Article 15 of the Indian Constitution today, which explicitly prohibits discrimination when it comes to accessing public wells and tanks. It literally provided the grammar of equality for the entire nation.
Fast forward to today, and that historical pursuit of equality brings us to the Supreme Court's recent and highly significant ruling on the OBC creamy layer. Now, what exactly is the creamy layer? This definition is absolutely vital. It is not just some economic threshold based on a bank balance. It represents a social advancement threshold. The idea is that if a family has attained a certain status, say, becoming a high-ranking officer, the social stigma of backwardness is presumed to have vanished, so they no longer need the crutch of reservation, which then leaves more space for those who are genuinely still struggling.
So the real crux of the issue is how the Supreme Court applied this concept to a recent dispute. See, the government was evaluating the children of government employees based on their parents' professional rank or post. Makes sense. But for private and PSU employees, they were using a strict income-only test. Well, the Supreme Court struck this down. They ruled that excluding candidates based solely on salary income without even looking at their professional rank leads to what they called hostile discrimination. Basically, it treats equals unequally. So the court is now forcing a much more holistic assessment of social wealth. They want to ensure parity across all employment sectors so that the benefits of reservation actually reach the people who truly need them.
All right, moving on to our second pillar, let's ask the question that is for sure keeping every modern professional awake at night. Is artificial intelligence actually coming for your job right now? This brings us to Section 2, Navigating Economic Shifts, where we look at everything from cutting-edge tech to traditional agriculture.
A recent Anthropic report visually maps out the labor market impacts of AI, and it's a real eye-opener. It breaks down the economy by sector, so you've got agriculture and construction on one end, swinging all the way around to computer and math, business and legal on the other. And looking at the data, you can clearly see where the exposure spikes aggressively outward, identifying the white-collar sectors that are, theoretically at least, the most exposed to large language models.
But don't panic just yet. This brilliantly illustrates the core conflict of our current tech anxiety. The report makes a huge distinction between what AI can do and what it is actually doing. On paper, theoretical AI coverage shows large language models could handle a staggering 94% of tasks in sectors like computer and math. 94%. But look at the observed AI exposure. In reality, AI is currently covering only about 33% of those tasks today. So what does this mean for you? Well, it suggests we're currently sitting in a crucial buffer period. The technology is absolutely capable, but real-world implementation, workflow integration, and corporate adoption are lagging way behind. It gives the workforce some much-needed time to adapt before full automation really takes hold.
Now, shifting gears entirely from the future of work to the absolute backbone of the Indian economy, agriculture. Here, we confront an incredibly complex economic reality, the fierce debate around farm loan waivers. This is an issue that's seen an unprecedented surge, mostly driven by state-specific announcements popping up right before elections.
Let's break down the 2 sides of this heavily debated policy, because it's a massive balancing act. The rationale is quite clear, right? Waivers resolve this debt overhang that physically prevents farmers from buying new seeds or technology. By freeing up that disposable income, they theoretically boost rural consumption. And crucially, they act as an immediate social safety net during extreme climate distress, like droughts or floods. But the issues are equally weighty. Frequent waivers seriously erode the credit culture, meaning even honest borrowers might just stop repaying in anticipation of the next waiver. This causes sharp spikes in non-performing assets for banks and places a massive fiscal burden on state exchequers. Often, states are forced to cut back on long-term capital expenditures, like building much-needed roads or irrigation systems, just to fund the immediate waiver. So it's a profound tug-of-war between immediate relief and long-term financial health.
Let's step away from the domestic economy for a minute and look outward, asking a very modern, very real geopolitical question. How do you defend a border without using soldiers?
Our third pillar, securing strategic borders, examines exactly how nations are fundamentally changing the definition of territorial claims in the 21st century.
We are witnessing a totally new type of silent warfare right now. China's strategy involves building these model villages or border defense villages right in contested zones. By settling actual civilians there, they are creating facts on the ground to strengthen their claims over disputed territory under international law. Plus, these are dual-use infrastructures. They easily serve as forward logistics hubs for their military. It's a textbook salami-slicing tactic.
And we can see exactly how India is responding to this. They aren't just matching military might. They rolled out the Vibrant Villages Program, or VVP, in 2022. This initiative is heavily modernizing 663 border villages, turning them into thriving hubs with all amenities and even tourist attractions. The primary goal? To stop the outward migration of civilians away from the border. Because a populated border is a secure border. Alongside this, there's a massive push for dual-use infrastructure on the Indian side too, speeding up the construction of all-weather roads, bridges, and helipads. These serve the local population day to day, but absolutely ensure rapid troop movement when it's necessary.
For our final transition, we have to look inward and outward at the exact same time. Can a nation simultaneously secure its long-term environmental future on the global stage while fighting an immediate, visceral health crisis at home?
Let's dive into Section 4, Health and Climate Frontiers, juxtaposing the macro goals of our planet with the micro-realities of human survival.
Connecting the dots back to the global stage, India has set some massive new 2035 climate targets. Following up on the Panchamrit strategy announced at COP26, India is now aiming for a staggering 60% non-fossil fuel electricity capacity by 2035. That's building on a 50% target for 2030. They are also aiming to reduce emission intensity by 47% compared to 2005 levels. This is a very bold move of Global South leadership, asserting energy security and pushing hard toward a net zero trajectory by 2070, all while trying to balance the need for rapid economic development.
Yet bringing it back down to earth and immediate human realities, we have to look at this vital number 27. According to the latest UN report on child mortality, 27 represents India's current under 5 mortality rate per 1,000 live births. While global progress has kind of stalled out lately, India has actually demonstrated sharp, steady progress here, inching incredibly close to the UN's Sustainable Development Goal target of 25.
But to finally cross that finish line and hit the UN goal, we must confront the malnutrition infection cycle. It is a tragic, vicious loop. Here's how it works. Malnutrition suppresses a child's immune system. This makes them highly susceptible to deadly yet common infections like pneumonia or diarrhea. Those infections then cause further nutrient loss and a reduced appetite, which drastically worsens the malnutrition. This is a critical takeaway for us. The indirect effects of malnutrition are often far deadlier than actual starvation itself. Breaking this cycle requires precise, community-level interventions, which is exactly why tracking data through systems like the Poshan Tracker is so absolutely vital today.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive. From the century-old water protests of Mahad that are actively shaping today's Supreme Court benches, to the invisible buffer period we have right now before AI automates our workflows, all the way to the silent civilian villages guarding our borders and the race to save our most vulnerable children. The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is a profound question of pace and adaptation. Are our policies evolving fast enough to master our history, our technology, and our borders all at once? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the headlines, and I'll see you next time as we continue to connect the dots.